This is Eyewitness News Up Close with Bill Ritter.
7 weeks from this morning, June 30th, the controversial congestion pricing plan is scheduled to go into effect. Hundreds of thousands of commuters will be affected. And by affected, we mean a $15 toll to drive below 60th Street in Manhattan. The MTA says this is going to reduce congestion and help the environment while providing a permanent stream of income to improve mass transit. Critics call it a money grab by the MTA at a time when people are already dealing with inflation and ever-increasing costs of living. This morning, we talked to the chair and CEO of the MTA, Janno Lieber. And this week, Stormy Daniels took the stand in the Trump criminal trial here in Manhattan. Some of the testimony from the porn star, salacious to say the least. This, as a former president watched and heard details he probably never wanted the public or his family to hear. This morning, we talked to ABC News executive editorial producer John Santucci, who's been covering Trump for years and is covering the trial. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Bill Ritter. Welcome to Up Close. Those who have backed congestion pricing insist the additional tolls are designed to reduce air pollution and reduce traffic below 60th Street in Manhattan. The cost to drivers, well, cars pay $15 on prime time. Trucks range from $24 to $36. You pay an extra $1.25 to ride a taxi in that area, and rideshare costs are $2.50 a ride. It means also billions of dollars for the MTA. The start date, as we said, Sunday, June 30th, 7 weeks from today, but there are a number of lawsuits that have been filed to try to block it. The controversy isn't yet quite over, some would say. Joining us this morning is Chair and CEO of the MTA, Janno Lieber. What do you say? Is the controversy over?
No, listen, anytime you try to do something big and that changes things in important ways, there's going to be controversy. This is New York. I did the World Trade Center project for more than a dozen years, and there was controversy all along, and yet we built it and we finished it. We restored New York's pride and created a better downtown. We are trying to address a problem that is real, which is that New York is #1 in congestion. It crushes our economy, and it's frankly a danger to our health because ambulances can't get to hospitals. The air is being poisoned. Traffic violence. People are complaining that they're afraid to walk their kids to school because of traffic rage around the tunnels, especially in the bridges. So we got to do something, and that's why the legislature said, let's try congestion pricing. That's how we got here, not because the MTA came up with it on their own. You
made your pitch for many months.
Yeah.
You just made it again.
Yeah.
So it says to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, I don't know that's your line about this, but is there part of you that worries that some judge is going to say, stop this, temporarily or permanently?
Listen, we can't control the legal process. All I know is that when part of this process is that we had to go and do this incredibly complicated federal environmental review. And that's what's at issue in the litigation. Bizarrely, Phil Murphy is suing Joe Biden in an election year. That's what's going on right here. And we're confident because we did 4,000 pages of environmental study and the federal government gave us an A+. We'll see what happens with the judge, but I am confident that we did everything we're supposed to do.
There are a lot of people who would say, okay, that's all very well and good, and hopefully it stops traffic.
Yeah.
Hopefully it gets more people to take the subway, and we have a better operation. That's good. I want to talk about that too. But you know, Phil Murphy, you like the guy. You know, you do. You have had good operations with him until this.
Yeah.
Lots of people are saying we want to take it to court, and not just in New Jersey. It's on Long Island, and there's some in Westchester County. There are people who say, hey, this is not the right time. Even former Governor Cuomo said, this is not the right time. The economy's not right. People are stretched thin with money. And I know that was part of your equation.
Yeah, listen, like I said, there's going to be controversy when you try to do anything big that impacts on people's lives. But we always talk about the drivers. Let's talk about the mass transit commuters. There's 6 million of them every day. There are 140,000 people who drive into the Central Business District as commuters. So we're always talking only about those drivers. By the way, the actual switch, people talk about people being forced, it's only like 20 or 30,000 people are expected to move from driving to mass transit. And right now we have a golden age of mass transit. We have, we increased service on the subway lines, on the buses. Today I announced up in Westchester we're increasing ferry service so people can get across the Hudson to the Metro North service, which is, by the way, running at 99% on-time performance. Transit is great. And New Yorkers, overwhelmingly, 90% of them who go to our midtown and downtown business districts actually use transit. So let's talk about them and not only about the drivers. That's my view.
All right, before I get into the weeds of all this,
yeah.
What are your plans? Do you have contingency plans? If a judge comes and says, you know, Janno, sorry about this, but we're going to put this on hold for a year.
Yeah, listen, we don't have a plan B, and there is, as you pointed out, there's a lot of money at stake. What does that money pay for if somebody stops congestion pricing? It means we can't keep up the pace where we're making, finally, subway stations ADA accessible with elevators. We've been doing it at a breakneck pace. This would stop us in our tracks. The 2nd Avenue subway finally being brought up to Harlem, to East Harlem, promised for like 75 years. That project would be stopped. All of the switch to electric buses. We got a lot of electric buses we're going to buy with that money to make for a cleaner air environment, especially in some of these bus-intensive minority districts in the outer boroughs. That would be impacted. Bad stuff. But it is in the hands of the judges who are looking at whether, as I said, the feds gave us an A+ for our environmental review. Is the court system going to second guess that?
The irony of this is you want fewer cars to get there, right? You want fewer cars to go in that lower than 60th Street. And yet you are depending on those fees, those new fees, to help with your construction and your new capital campaign. So is there a contradiction there? Yeah,
listen, the goal is first and foremost to deal with congestion, because that's what's doing so much harm and making the central business district in Manhattan not viable. I mean, if fire trucks can't get to fires, as I said, ambulances can't get to hospitals. If you had a loved one in that ambulance with a heart attack and their life was on the line, are you really for traffic? I mean, those are the issues. Yes, there is money to be had coming out of it, but what makes more sense than investing benefits from tolls and fees like this into mass transit so it becomes even easier to move around the city? That's what New Yorkers know. That's how you get around.
But if a lot of people take advantage of this and say, okay, I'm going to not do this anymore, I'm going to go ride the subways all the time, that $15 billion that you're hoping for the capital campaign from this congestion pricing fee, that won't happen.
Yeah, listen, all we can do is say that based on experience in London and Stockholm and a lot of other world cities, our projection is the switch is only about 20,000 people, 30,000 people. So we will see what happens. There are a lot of people who seem to be happy driving to the business district and paying $50 to park. So this is not a problem for low-income people. Yeah. If there are people who really are wealthy enough to continue to do that, that's going to be fine. But what we're trying to do is knock down traffic, 20, 25%. That's our real goal. Makes it better for everybody.
You know a lot of the people who have taken the lawsuit angle. Josh Gottheimer, the congressman from New Jersey. I assume you got along with him before all this. What is your reaction when they call you a money grabber?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the whole thing is ridiculous, honestly. Obviously, you guys have covered the opponents, especially Gottheimer, a lot. I mean, this is a guy, honestly, this is a guy who's got a mass transit line that's supposed to serve his constituents, the Hudson-Bergen line, that's been sitting there for 25 years, and he never raised the money. He's never lifted a finger for mass transit. New Jersey commuters, 80% who take mass transit are suffering because people like Gottheimer have not prioritized mass transit. So I don't mind being attacked by people like that. And if he wants to continue driving into the city, he's always late for his press conferences because of traffic, and parking illegally in a chauffeur-driven car and getting coverage from the press. We can't stop that. All we can say is, listen, this is the New York State legislature that's doing that. He's playing games when he tries to make it like it's an MTA decision.
What's your dream about all this? You're sitting there in bed going, okay, this is what we really want before you go to sleep. This is what we really want for the next 10 years. What's your 10-year plan?
What I really want is what London did, which is they increased the number of people who are coming to the city for work, for recreation, for shopping, for culture. They dramatically increased it, but those people went to mass transit and not driving in, and it became a safer place in terms of car accidents and traffic violence. It became better air quality, and generally they were able to grow their economy of their core business district without having a ton of traffic. Paris is doing a lot of things very similar. That's what we want. We're a world city, and New York ought to lead. The rest of the country is watching, and I think that we're going to be successful, and others may follow.
One more thing, and then we get safety in the subways. The safety question is one thing.
Yeah.
What's happened in New York with a lot of people, on Zoom instead of coming to the offices? You're gonna need those people to come back.
Yeah.
And what if they don't come back?
Listen, there's no question that hybrid work is here to stay, but we're operating a very successful system economically and operationally at about 80% of our pre-COVID commuter levels. But interestingly, Bill, people are riding more than they did before COVID at nights and weekends and in the off hours. When people have somewhere they want to go, they're not always going 5 days a week to the office, but when they have somewhere they want to go, they're taking mass transit. That's because the system is operating better.
It is, no question, crowded on the subways on the weekend. There's no question.
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised by it, and it's kind of interesting.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing. It's also safer. What do you tell riders now about safety?
Listen, part of this is just the stats. We have less crime than we did pre-COVID, but part of it is about the feeling of safety that we have to restore. There's a little sense of disorder in the public spaces in the city. The NYPD has been amazing. They put more cops in, and interestingly, they're pushing against fare evasion at the fare gates, and they're catching bad guys. So we want people to feel safe in the subways. The final point on that issue, Bill, we have got an intensive program to get the people who are severely mentally ill and who are it's bad for them to be in the subways, but it's also scary for the riders. We got to get them out, and we have a special program that targets them to try to get them indoors and into treatment. So
the arrests you made, there were arrests on Wednesday this week.
Big ones.
4 people, and for big crimes too. Bratton, Commissioner Bratton, when he was commissioner the first time, said, and he still feels this way, if we get people who bust them when they go jump over the fare and just don't pay for it, a lot of those people are wanted anyway. Yeah. So that raises our rates of arrest.
Yeah, I mean, like I always say, not every fare beater is a criminal, but every criminal doesn't pay the fare. Whether they go over or under or through the gate, they're all beating the fare. And actual fare enforcement, which Mayor Adams and the NYPD have prioritized, is really important. But we're doing more. We have to change the physical fare gates. That exit gate has become the super highway of fare evasion, and I won't take you through the details, but we are doing a ton of different things to shut that down. We have to make the physical turnstiles and fare structures better at repelling fare evaders, and we're working on that right now.
And there's also graffiti still in the subways, and there is also something that I know this last week got you ticked off, and it was an anti-Semitic poster put on the subways.
Yeah, I mean, listen, what's happening is that some of these, they call themselves pro-Palestinian activists, but we all know that issue is extremely controversial. They come in the middle of the night, they unscrew the frames, and they put in their own ads. Our people at the end of the line are under strict instructions to find those ads and to remove them. They're fake ads. The MTA is not sanctioned them. We would never do so. And what we need from the public is when they see those, tell us where, which line, and ideally the car number. It's on every car, so we can make sure that our team at the end of the line actually grabs them and removes those signs, which are, they pretend to be ads, but they're just, inappropriate, illegal political advertising.
The subways are not necessarily known, thankfully, as a place filled with hate crimes, though, usually.
No, absolutely not. There's no place for hate. The public space, this is a sacred public space, I always say, because it's where every day we play out the experiment in tolerance and diversity. Just by getting on the train and sharing the public space, as we do in New York, we're proving that diversity works. I love it. But we can't have any kind of hate or any kind of mistreatment of any other group present.
That's the mantra for New York. If you live here, there's no place for hate.
Amen.
And
Amen.
We all get along. And how we do that should be a lesson for the rest of the world as well. Janno Lieber, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Bill.
And good luck to you.
You bet.
Now to former President Trump's criminal trial here in Manhattan. And Lower Manhattan, the courthouse. One of the star witnesses this past week, Stormy Daniels, going into rather salacious details on how she says she had sex with Mr. Trump and how she received money to stay quiet about it. Former president in court listening to it all. He's still denying he even had a relationship with her. What a most bizarre presidential campaign, right? The Republican candidate spending most of his time in a courtroom in Manhattan, his hometown city that he left several years ago because he didn't like paying taxes in New York. Joining me this morning, ABC News executive editorial producer John Santucci, who has covered Mr. Trump for quite a while. John, welcome to Up Close.
Thank you, Bill.
So before we get back into what happened this last week, let's look ahead.
Sure.
Because Monday is sort of the real trial here in all this. Right?
It's remarkable that it took this long to get there, but tomorrow is going to set up probably the most explosive day of testimony. Here's why. This trial, Bill, would not have happened if Michael Cohen hadn't spoke. So just let's rewind the clock a little bit if we can, right? If you recall, Donald Trump has gone through a lot of special counsel investigations. So Special Counsel 1, Robert Mueller, the Russia investigation. That's where, believe it or not, this all began. Because Michael Cohen spilled his guts when he basically went and did his interview with Robert Mueller. When Robert Mueller finished his investigation, anything that wasn't related to that investigation, but he believed warranted criminal investigation elsewhere, he farmed out, sent several different pieces of information in different offices. This piece of information went to prosecutors in the Southern District of New York. That's the federal U.S. Attorney's office here, as we know. You all cover it at Channel 7 all the time. And other parts of it went to the New York prosecutors in the Manhattan DA's office. So that's where this all began. What's remarkable about it, if you had asked me 8 years ago, 9 years ago soon, when I first started covering Donald Trump, who would flip on him? Michael Cohen wouldn't be in 1, 2, 10 position.
He was the biggest spokesperson he's ever had.
He was the guy that promoted himself as Donald Trump's pit bull, Bill. This was the guy that had said famously he would take a bullet for Donald Trump. Not a Secret Service agent. Michael Cohen said he would take a bullet for Donald Trump. So to think that he's there now going to tell all about his former boss, and let's be clear, he knows all. That's why this is the witness.
So I remember watching him on CNN, and he would blast anyone who, any criticism of Donald Trump. He was a bulldog. So the defense on this, you know what's going to happen. They're going to try to level him, right? Because they said, hey, when do you lie? When do we know when you're lying, when you're not lying? Because you were lying back then, right?
Well, and remember, prosecutors had to get ahead of that in their opening statements, right? Because the charges that Cohen was ultimately convicted of in the Southern District that he did go to prison for a brief period of time, then COVID happened, was because he lied to federal investigators. So they know they have a problem here. He's not a perfect witness. So for the defense, in some ways, Michael Cohen knows what's coming, if you will, because he was the guy that would go do this for Donald Trump. So big part of what they're going to be attacking him for is obviously all of his lies, all of his mistruths, and the fact that he has been making money off of Donald Trump. Look, one story we broke at ABC News, Bill, leading up to this trial, and it came up Friday leading up to this testimony, is that Michael Cohen is still talking about this case as it's ongoing. Witnesses are not supposed to. Our team was watching Michael Cohen do nightly TikTok videos talking about it. Even just recently, Bill, we saw Michael Cohen talking to camera, talking to his supporters with a T-shirt of an animation, an image of Donald Trump behind bars. That makes it a really difficult witness for prosecutors. Nevertheless, he's the guy. Doesn't seem quite presidential, all this stuff, to be honest with you. Just as a country reporter watching this, as a lay person. I want to get your take on what happened this last week with Stormy Daniels. And also, you know, people are I wonder, you know, you've been in the trial, and what is it? How is Trump reacting to all this? Because, you know, we don't see it. We see a picture of him. I know. We don't see video. You know, it's funny. I sent a long note around. I know you read it after I was there that day. It was stunning. You know, I've been around Donald Trump a lot over the years, as you well know. I've covered him for ABC. And to see him in a room where he has no control, that's never happened for Donald Trump in his life. So he comes in, he sits down, he gets ready for when they take a photo in the morning, and then he's almost restraining himself. He's quiet. He's, you know, there's been reports that he's falling asleep. I saw his head jerk a couple times. I definitely saw his eyes closed. And in some way, and I talked to a couple sources of mine about it, like, what's happening here? They just say, listen, he's trying to tune it out. This is hard for him. Let's take Michael Cohen away. Let's take Stormy Daniels away. There are employees of Donald Trump that worked for him for decades, the comptroller for his company, his longtime assistant, Bill. He only had 2 assistants in his entire career. Decades, only 2 people. They knew everything. It was so hard for him to have to sit there and watch it all. We only have about 30 seconds left. What's your take on how he has responded to the gag order and ignoring the gag? Well, I mean, horribly, right? He's got $10,000 he owes the state of New York, so not so good. And the next time could be jail. That's exactly right. And listen, as far-fetched as that may sound to your viewers, it's not. The Secret Service, NYPD, Bill, they've all had conversations. If he violates the gag order again, jail's possible. They're ready for it.
And the judge, what do you think he's going to do?
You know, I think it's possible. I think the judge has shown he's not messing around, and he's listening to everything Donald Trump's saying. Look, that camera outside court, the fact that he's making comments, prosecutors taking notes, it's getting him in trouble.
No question about it. It's going to be quite a week.
It is.
And we thank you for giving us a preview.
Thanks, Bill.
John Santucci, thank you for that. Just ahead, our political team on the presidential race and much more. That's next. Welcome back to Up Close. Now to the week in politics. ABC News political director Rick Klein and veteran political consultant Hank Scheinkoff. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us once again. There's a lot to talk about. I want to talk first about the pronouncement by the Biden administration that right now there will be no more weapons supplied to Israel to help them bomb Gaza. The U.S. will protect Israel and help them if someone's attacking them, but no more of that. What's the political implications of that? Because everything's a buzz with that.
Yeah, and whether the White House wants to admit it or not, politics are everywhere on this. We've seen the college campus protests. We've heard so many Democrats saying that the president needs to change course and put some more pressure on Bibi, and that's the best he can really do. This is not the U.S. war. It's Netanyahu and Israel's war, and the only way that it seems like a message can get through is by talking with our pocketbooks and saying, look, we're going to start cutting this stuff off if you don't change the way that you're conducting your behavior there. I think it's a realization that both politically and practically, there's not going to be another way to break through other than to send this kind of very, very strong message of a red line to Israel. Because,
Hank, most of America, indeed most of the world, wants this war to end. Extremes on both sides move out of the way because the world wants peace over there.
Well, the world wants peace, but the problem is the United States has asked Israel to fight a proxy war against Iran. And that is the real issue. The United States does not want to go to war with Iran, and they don't want to have a wider war before this presidential campaign is resolved. The world is in great angst. The American peace that's been guaranteed since 1945 is now at risk, not just in the Middle East, but in Europe. It's too much for one president to handle. And frankly, if it blows up, we will have a disaster going into next year.
We're not talking about immigration. We're not talking about a thousand things because this has become a big political issue, Rick. And I can't help but see what Mr. Trump has done. And he's lampooning any Jew in America who votes for Biden. And he was pretty, it was tough language that he issued.
Yeah, it's tough language. It also is considered anti-Semitic language by many because it conflates Judaism with support for a country. They're two different concepts. And there are lots of American Jews and even Israeli Jews who don't believe strongly in the Netanyahu policy or very much oppose what Netanyahu is doing and the way he's conducting the war. You can be very supportive of Israel and supportive of Israel's right to exist, and it's supportive of Israel's right to defend itself after being attacked viciously by Hamas, and also be concerned that the Netanyahu government has gone too far in tossing aside humanitarian concerns. Trump has used this kind of language before and kind of sanded over a lot of the rough edges of this policy. If he were president, it'd be a lot different. But it is a question that I think protesters out there saying who won't support Biden, are you going to support Trump instead when Trump is making these kind of statements and also calling for a Muslim ban? It's really a hard thing to square when you get down to the politics.
The former president has grandchildren, Hank, who are quite Jewish.
Well, look. What he's doing is he's not really talking to Jews. He's not going to win New York or California, where there are large Jewish populations. He's talking to evangelical Christians. He's talking to people who think, so he wants to remind or make them believe somehow that Joe Biden is weak. He's talking to people who somehow think the United States is losing its ability to protect the world and to make peace. Yeah. That's who he's talking to, and those are his constituency members.
We have about less than a minute left, gentlemen. I want to just go through something that it also struck me as right up your alley. This governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem, had quite a week. Had quite a week doing television interviews. Not only shooting a dog, etc., but she wants to be the vice president, running with Mr. Trump as well. She took it on the chin this week, I'd say, to say the least, Rick.
Yeah, and it's all self-inflicted. I don't feel like there's going to be a new term in politics. To be Kristi Noem would be to do damage to yourself. This is all stuff in her own autobiography, not just about the murdering of a 14-month-old puppy, but also a fabricated meeting with the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, that she even now, even though it's being removed from her book and the audiobook, she won't admit that the meeting never even happened. It's just mind-boggling, and it's made her, frankly, weird in the eyes of a lot of the people that are watching this stuff closely as Donald Trump settles on a vice presidential running mate.
Hank, 10 seconds you got, if you could.
Do you think that she's going to stand there with Kim Jong-un and her dog and shoot the both of them at the same time? Can we trust her is really the question. She's nuts, and she's not going to be the vice president.
The last word from Hank Scheikoff and Rick Klein. Thank you both for joining us. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Paul.
Take care. We'll be right back. That's going to do it for this edition of Up Close. Champa with my pal Joe Torres is coming up next. If you missed any of today's programs, not to worry. I'll post today's segments on my Facebook page tomorrow. And you can watch the show, by the way, on our new podcast. Yep, we hit the big time on any of our ABC 7 NY platforms. Thank you all for watching. I'm Bill Ritter, and a happy Mother's Day to all out there. For all of us here at Channel 7 Eyewitness News, we wish you health and peace, and let's take care of each other.